Ladies and gentlemen, it is here, the fourth consecutive, I think, year-end podcast from myself, Samson Folk Louis Zatzman, the long version of the season review. It will be timestamped. If there's a certain player you want to hear about, a coach or whatever the hell, we timestamp these babies. They go long. We talk about it all. Louis, how you feeling? Good, I
I'm feeling
presume.
good, man. I always look forward to these greatly. Just getting to pal around with my guy, knowing I'll have some time here. It's really nice.
We love a little pal around,
We
There's
do.
there's quite frankly, there's not a bunch of things in this world better than a little pal around.
Yeah, no kidding, right?
Yeah. Yeah. So, that I guess is one of the actual talking points of this season because we're going to start talking about the vibe of the team.
Yeah,
Then we'll go the order of operations, talking about every player. Palling around seems to be the message that this franchise wants to give about what this season was. It also seems to be what the players want to say. You and I have been here talking after I was not in Toronto and we saw a team that was trying to make that next step. And then we were here talking after a coach was fired and after a season of disappointments and where vibes were not. It was not palling around, it
yeah,
seemed. Where do you sit on the A plus culture that Masai Ujiri has described for his team?
yeah. I was doubtful in the beginning of the year. Training camp. I mean, you and I were both there. The buzzword was like summer camp, right? They were all together as unity, and that we play hard. We play for each other. I was doubtful when the rubber met the road whether that would get run over like a stray kitten.
Hmm.
Um, but it didn't. There were definite stretches where they stopped playing hard. It always came back. There were definite stretches when they had every reason to be frustrated, to not, vibe together. It always came back. And by the end of the season, um, they were very much all on the same page. Players, front office, coaching, and yeah, survived the test of the season.
So we can link this into what a lot of people talk about. And again, we're on the outside here very much, but what do you think that says about Scottie as a leader of the team? Because everyone says Scottie's the leader of the team. That is across the board. Nobody challenges that. Nobody scoffs at that. Everyone endorses that. Teams are supposed to take on the spirit of their or often do take on the spirit of their best player. Is this like a tremendous sign for you?
Yeah, I think there was, let's not discount Garrett Temple as well, who really, like, the guys love him. He got back into video games to hang out with the
Oh
kids.
yeah. Well, I hated getting back into video games
I
are
know.
so good, man. Hoo-wee.
Um, but, there was definitely a time um, when Scottie Barnes' leadership was tested.
Mhm.
I think it came in early January, right? When oh no, that was I don't have the game.
The losing 15 games out of 16, right? That's
Yeah,
the
yeah.
nasty bit of business.
And there was one of those games when he came up to the podium afterwards because he seemed to have not been wanting to play. Like he just didn't really look like he wanted to be on the court. And I asked him, I was like, "How is your leadership right now? How are you leading? How would you judge how you're doing it?" And he didn't use the word I once in the answer. He's like, well, we need to be better. We need to, we need more leadership. And I thought it was kind of a softball question to be like, I am usually a jovial, I lead by smiles and example. And right now I'm not finding that. And I need to, I thought it was a pretty easy thing to access. And I got none of it. And I was very skeptical, to be honest, of what that meant for him as a leader during the hard stretches. And I think he answered that over the rest of the season. Everyone has down moments. Clearly, that was a down moment for the team, for him as a leader, for everyone, really, for Darko. Um, but they really bounced back. There was no other low point, I think, for his leadership for the team. And I was very, very impressed because things like that, what you say to media in the scrum after matters, I guess, a tiny bit or not at all. What you do in the following weeks and months, that's what really matters. And that's what he performed in. And that matters much more to me than what he said to me after the game.
Yeah. The speaking thing is it matters a little or not at all.
Yeah, or
And
not at all.
it doesn't go beyond that. It matters sometimes a little, which is why Scottie has made it a priority in his own life to I guess ostensibly like improve at it so that he can, harness the messages that he wants to convey and do them effectively. It's everybody got tested during that stretch, I think, as well.
Yeah.
This was a Raptors team that was losing a bunch at the start of the season, and Scottie wasn't. He was dealing with a bunch of injuries, right? He'd come
Yeah.
back from the hand, went through all preseason, but then immediately is missing games. Immanuel Quickley gets injured in game number 1. RJ Barrett and Gradey Dick are the features of the offense and the team as a whole. All this stuff is kind of happening, and it's just fun because Gradey is scoring 26 points, then 29 points, then 32 points, and it's just like, yeah, the team is supposed to lose. And when guys come back, it'll be good. And then we do, Scottie comes back and the defense is fun for a little bit, but it's just this Jenga tower is wobbling and gets ready to fall. Then we have 15 losses in 16 games, and there it goes. Not only is Scottie as a leader like questioned, people immediately start remembering, oh, what is Scottie? Where has he faltered before in the past as a very young man, right? An all-star earlier than many of his contemporaries, many of the franchise players of the past for the Raptors, just thrust into things at an earlier age than most people have been in this team. Then Darko, everybody wants to fire Darko. That is the
Yeah.
that is the tone. That is the consensus. Is this guy's he just doesn't have it. And Darko also is credited for this team, the vibe of this team. And of course, if next year is bad, then none of this matters. It's like, oh, I'm glad you guys had fun then, I guess,
Yeah.
and it'll just never be good. But if they're good next year, then this is paramount. All of this culture, all of this summer camp for each other, fun, joy, all that kind of stuff. Darko, a big Darko booster here, big Darko booster there. You and I have both enjoyed his coaching process. He also gets a lot of lip service about how he contributes to this culture. How do you feel about Darko, I guess, on the whole?
Yeah, I think it was an A+ season from Darko. Some of the criticism early, like there was times when he didn't call a timeout late.
There's critiques. Certainly
Yep.
there is, yes.
Far be it from me, though, to think losing games this season was bad, right? Like, given what they went through later, good thing they lost, right? That's what they wanted to do. You don't want to stack up wins early, kind of like the Spurs, and
Yeah.
then try to lose later. That has to be solved, obviously, for next year. I have every reason to believe it can be. And late season, you've really hammered on this. Or late games, that's not up to the coach. Like, the star decides what happens on that last possession. The coach can call a play, player can run it or not. Like, that's just how it is around the NBA. That's not unique to Darko. That's not unique to Scottie. That's the league that these guys play in. But that's so minor in terms of what coaches do. So maybe you want to dock the plus, or maybe A-, but given some of those little
You knew I was going to. You're
I'm
already
working my way
preempting.
through this. But keeping everyone together, amazing. Finding the development for everyone. During Jamison Battle's really hot shooting game where he just went nuts. One of his first threes was like a drifting three around a screen into the corner where his feet weren't set. They were like swinging as he shot. Nailed it. That's the exact type of shot that coming out of college was not accessible to him.
Yeah.
And I've seen Darko working with him in the gym after practice, how to run into the movement three, how to keep your feet set as your body's moving, how to access that shot. We saw it. It's just we saw him working with Ochai on his jumper in training camp in great depth, and his jumper looks a whole world better now than it did the end of last season, the start of this season. Like, it's clear he has his fingerprints not just on the team play, and we can talk about the defense and the offense, but also in the micro skills of the players themselves. Something that championship coaches don't have time to do. They're not working with undrafted rookies on how to access different types of shots. They're not. And he did an amazing job, I think, with everyone. Like, improvement up and down the roster from guys who weren't supposed to be huge stories ended up with amazing nights. Jakob Poeltl hitting a game winner. Like, the fact that he had that trust to have the ball, to have the minutes, to have the season he had. Obviously, 99% goes to Jacoby himself, but whatever can go to a coach does go to Darko for all of it. I was really impressed with his fingerprints up and down sort of all the success that did come for the roster.
It's a great little saying. Whatever can go to him does. That's quite good. It's very effective at summing up whatever is in the mind's eye of the listener, viewer, whatever it is. Good one. I agree wholeheartedly. Every player walked through and credited him, not just with like the lip service, I love my coach, but specific details of how he's helped them, how he is accommodating, even like the veterans like Jakob or Garrett saying like he is definitely more hands-on than most coaches that they're used to. And Jakob just had, we'll get into Jakob later, obviously, career best season. Many players turned things around. Many
Yeah.
players found footholds. And we could use this as an opportunity to get into the offensive system.
Yeah.
And we'll walk through offensive system, defensive system. Where do you sit on the offense?
Can I
Oh,
add
go
one
ahead.
addendum quickly? I
Yes.
loved when Jacoby was like, yeah, he called me soft as shit after one game. He's like, I'd respond. I think a lot of he's a player's coach. He's a yes man. He's a soft coach. I think that's misleading sort of thing because guys like him. Just because guys like you doesn't mean he's soft. And I think we do see him, if the point isn't made, making it firmer.
That's a good point. I actually got a bit of criticism on the podcast because I said like he is light on criticism of players, like he won't criticize
Yeah.
players. And Darko has mentioned that he will not criticize players in media, but he'll do it behind closed doors. That is a good point. But I will also say, like Darko, if asked about an objective flaw in a player, will kind of like stiff arm. That's more so
Yes.
what I'm saying. I don't want Darko to lambast. I don't know whichever it is. I don't want him to do that to his players. However, to openly discuss like uh, shortfalls in players' games is not that should not be beyond a coach, in my
The Nick
opinion.
Nurse of it all.
But Nick Nurse, boy, did he would take a compliment and turn it into a negative about a player. That
Let me
was his
tell you what I
specialty.
hate about Chris Boucher.
You're like, yeah, don't you think he's been good? No, actually, I think he's been quite bad. Super disappointed. But to the point about Darko is that Darko sounds different and operates differently than what a lot of people are used to seeing from coaches.
Yeah.
Whether he ends up being an elite coach or not, time will tell. But when people are new and things are new, then what we're looking at is people will project past expectations, experiences, or all that kind of stuff onto them. The offensive system, broad strokes for listeners, the Raptors were a team that struggled immensely creating off the bounce. They were one of, if not the worst team in the league. They have immense amounts of ball movement. They like to get from point A to point B without the dribble, but with the ball. They were a terrible pull-up shooting team. They were one of the worst at-rim finishing teams in the NBA. They took valuable shots. They did not make them. That seems to speak to Darko's offense, putting the ball in the right place and shots not being made. Now, players have to make decisions, all that kind of stuff. Lewis, thoughts on this and moving into the future?
I have some stats I'd like to share. Isolation, this is purely possessions that are ended by a play type. I'm not talking about if a play type is there and then they move on to something else, just what ends with a turnover, a shot, or free throws. Isolation. The Raptors ended up as an isolation team with the fewest possessions of any team per game. They scored the fourth fewest points per possession in isolation. Pick and roll as the ball handler, so the guards' usage of the pick and roll, they were sixth fewest possessions per game, the second lowest points per possession. And pick and roll for the roll man,
They were okay,
they
middle of the road.
yeah, they were a lot higher. So they were
Jakob
1, 2, 3,
Poeltl
4, 5, 6,
merchants, the
7, 8,
lot of
9,
them.
10, 11, 12, 13th highest in frequency, and right around there, a little higher in points per possession. I just wanted to include that to show something that shows up in the stats that's not our guards can't dribble. They entered the season with a lot of missing skills. You and I wrote and podcasted about them ad nauseum. No pull-up shooting, no self-creation. And then they had injuries to the guys who were best at that throughout the year. And I think Darko did a very impressive job saying, let's just run more delay than any other team in the league. Let's let Jakob Poeltl make decisions. And they ended up with a ton of cuts, a ton of rim attempts. They ended up with a ton of passing. They were also, when you go to passing stats, I believe they were fifth. They were sixth in the league for most passes made per game. So, a lot of really important, successful things. Third in the league in possessions ended by cuts. I think that speaks to Darko as much as a coach possibly can influence success. More than I think most coaches it's possible for them. Just because the finding the delay offense in Poeltl, something that he hasn't had a ton of chances to do. The offense looked better with Poeltl running it than with Scottie Barnes running it. Take that for what it is. That's not a value-laden statement, but good on the Raptors for finding success where they
to
could.
build on that, I think a great is the Jonathan Mogbo played 30 plus minutes 7 times.
Yep.
He averaged 7 assists per game in those games. Why? Because the system that the Raptors run, it is easier for them to get a look off of a split cut, off of a back cut, off of a like a slice screen, all this kind of stuff, and have either Jakob Poeltl or Scottie Barnes or Jonathan Mogbo make a read from like the higher slot, and that's how they do it, because they do struggle immensely as far as scoring with a pick and roll ball handler, scoring out of isolation, all that kind of stuff. It's easier to let the ball do the work. And who is a protective fulcrum? Who is closer in proximity to the dangerous place on the floor? Big men. They had attempts at trying to, dominate in isolation or in bully drives or in post ups and all that kind of stuff. And we'll talk about this more. Scottie is a really great linchpin for this conversation. But it was like the Raptors were fifth highest usage as of late March in off ball possessions used. They just constantly cuts, off screens, all that kind of stuff. They're trying to circumnavigate their limitations. And with Brandon Ingram coming in the future, presumably some internal development, one is hoping that there is less circumnavigating to do, circumventing, whichever is more appropriate. I like the offense. I think the offense is like, of course, things break down and you need shot makers, and we see this all the time. And you need a more robust drive and kick. You need paint touches. But until the Raptors, and that's why I asked Masai that question, like, how do you think you've done building, like putting talent on this team after it was removed? And he was like, well, you ask me how I'm doing. I mean, I'm always going to say I'm doing good, right? And he was brutally honest, of course. But it's the Raptors just have so little on-ball talent. And as you said, we've talked about it. And that's why I never felt that bad about Darko, because I was like, I feel like the tenets, the what this offense is trying to do makes sense in the future, and is currently shoring up a lot of limitations now. And, Steph Curry can certainly dribble, but the Warriors don't ask him to dribble so much. They like the off-ball stuff. They like to weaponize that kind of stuff. You can be a good dribbler and still thrive in these types of environments. And going forward, Masai said he liked that Brandon Ingram, not just for losing games purposes, but that he liked that Brandon Ingram got to watch the team's process
Yeah.
before he jumps in, Darko also mentioned like we want this guy to be moving more, right? The worst offensive stretches for the Raptors this year came not from their quote unquote like back end players,
Yeah.
but from when Immanuel and Scottie held the ball and would, eject themselves out above the break and just slow things down. The system requires belief and buy-in. Any other offensive notes before we talk about the less glamorous side of the floor?
If there is buy-in, if Scottie has shown for stretches, he fits wonderfully when he
I
is
just
fitting.
he gave so much effort on defense. I feel like I couldn't question the guy. You
No,
know?
but there were games when he got into the
Yeah.
flow of the system and wasn't isolating and was letting people create for him where, oh man, you really see it. And if you get like, let's say they open next season 11-3 or whatever, and the guys, oh, we can really do this, right? And Emmanuel's finding his flow state, not having to create, just like be that guy who just finishes. And Brandon is cutting. Like if they have success and buy-in from Brandon and Scottie and Emmanuel, that offense could just punch at a crazy level.
Yeah. It's Scottie again. Scottie's gotten a lot of Giannis comparisons, so I'll take it here, especially since I just did a bunch of film work to do like prep the Pacers series versus the Bucks. Giannis is a lot more effective catching on the move than he is dribbling. And Giannis is a better dribbler and a much more dynamic driver than Scottie is. But you
Yeah.
can just see in the way that, like, think about the championship Raptors, how they guarded Giannis, kind of really not even being present near the gaps, but simply stepping into them so that there are no gaps. There's just wider routes and shooters have more space. And this offense and Scottie being in a flow state is kind of like, well, how often can we let Scottie catch on the move? How often can we get Scottie moving so that a smaller body is guarding him? How often can we let Scottie simply do the easy thing, which is overwhelm and dominate without the soft skills of his game? And then whatever percentage of the night he's dribbling, he's trying to create, he's getting into his bag. That's fine. That season we'll get into it, or this season we'll get into it a little bit later. But that balance, that equilibrium went really far one way, and it's development, so it is what it is. Defense. They
Defense.
were a top 5 defense since January. They were the best defense in the NBA since March. They were bottom 28 for a large part of the first half of the season. They were bottom 25 for 3/4 of the season, and they finished not in the bottom half of the league. What do you think about this defense and the hallmarks of it?
On media day, um, I wanted to write about defense, and I asked a question about defense, and Scott and Darko talked about the most important guy, and I feel like sort of everyone gravitated towards that idea, and that ended up being a pretty big topic on that day with everyone. Um, I was skeptical about designing the team's defense based on a journeyman in Davion Mitchell that you just traded for and probably weren't going to keep the whole season because he was the one guy capable of performing that they needed. And for the first half of the season, the one guy capable of holding the defense afloat. He had higher defensive on-offs for the start of the year than even Scottie Barnes. It was shocking how poorly it was working. And then they traded away Davion Mitchell when statistically, based on the year to that point, everything should have collapsed. They sort of took the scaffolding off and you got a building. It was amazing. It was not rooted in Davion Mitchell, no matter how much it seemed like it was. Scottie Barnes deserves the vast majority of the praise there. He papered over a lot. He had a truly stupendous defensive year. We'll get into that. And it's hard to know to what extent the defensive system was successful or simply Scottie Barnes was successful on that end. Jakob Poeltl settled in very, very nicely after an iffy start on the defensive end. Jamal Shead improved a lot at not fouling. He was really a poor defender to start. and settled into being productive in many ways. RJ Barrett, Immanuel Quickley really found their strides. The defense did not fall off a cliff at all with them on that. I tend to think that Toronto's principles of aggression, rotation, worked very well. I think it was a good year. I think Darko had a real vision that carried to fruition. I think it was that, if I'm going to say A plus anywhere, they went from 27th in defense last year to 14th in defense this year. That's pretty amazing.
The big thing for me is that I think Davion Mitchell was actually like super important still.
Yeah.
I think they had the easiest schedule in the league for the back half. That definitely like informed this major jump. And that doesn't mean things weren't working. And while the frequency and the height of the pickup point did fade a little bit over the course of the season, because you don't have Davion Mitchell to send out there every possession, but Immanuel Quickley is several orders of magnitude better offensively than Davion Mitchell. Even though Davion is shooting like 44% with the Heat, he's actually played really great with the Heat.
Yeah.
He fits in Heat culture, so good for Davion. But the Raptors currently, like at the end of the season, are sitting extremely, front offices and scouts and analysts would use the term lucky as far as like jump shot variation. In the last 3 years, they were 28th in 3-point defense. This is the percentage, not the volume. 26th this year, they were third.
Yeah.
The common wisdom is that you can't control for 3-point percentage to that degree. Sometimes you're just on the right side of variance. I think that plays into it a little bit, but the Raptors are still part of this it's what I talked with Chauncey Billups about this a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, why the Blazers were one of the first teams to start the high pickup point, why the Celtics and the Pacers were the two most oft backcourt defender, three-quarter court press pickup point teams. The Pacers overexceeded what everyone thought they would do, and the Celtics ended up winning. What does that pressure do? How does that inform the other team's pace? How does that inform their shot diets? And the thing is, it doesn't really inform shot diet, or I should say placement of shots, but it can help inform shot diet for star players. It can help inform where teams start their offense, and it can help inform whether going up or down, how fast an offense plays. It actually, oddly, at times, is strange that when you go play the full quarter or full court press or three-quarter court press, that you can get a team to play faster. You would think it slows them down, but sometimes it really speeds them up because you get a step on the initial guy. You see a lane, you start rushing down, and the team practices this. They're good at absorbing you and then popping back out. And then you have to reset. Go ahead. You clearly are sitting
It's
on
baseball,
something.
right? The harder you throw the ball, the harder they hit it, right? It's a
Excellent.
full game. It's not just a half and a half. The juice you put in is the juice that comes out.
We have our cow catcher moment. We've been waiting, our lodestone animal moment. We've been waiting on this. The Raptors, Scottie, I think in like 2 minutes we'll get into the Scottie Barnes of it all. He deserves a lot of credit in the same way I think Jason Tatum deserves a ton of credit on the Celtics. If you're a big forward and you clean up the glass, I don't know. Like, people overlook rebounding. They really do. It gets a little bit fetishized once you see a guy gets like 12 a game. But the guy who gets 8 a game or like 9 a game from a position that usually gets like 5 or 6.
Yeah.
And if you're a guy like Scottie, and Scottie, like, is he funny sometimes? Does he steal a rebound here and there? Sure. But he steals rebounds far more from opposing players. Like, he can go get the contested stuff. That allows them to play Jonathan Mogbo more. That allows them to clean up the defensive glass. That allows them to not get murdered. He papers over many things, and the Raptors just getting buy-in up and down the roster from guys who will go get guys higher up. Their ability to absorb guys who get the step on the defender, the most important guy, so he can catch up back into the play. They did a much better job cleaning up the defensive glass as the season went on. The fouls got a tiny bit better, although not that much, and they were able to force misses. Some of that is having the easiest strength of schedule. That evens out. But then you can make the point that they had a bastard of a schedule for the first half of the season.
Yep.
And they sat at 27th, 28th while being super injured. So it's not a home run heading into next year. Like, oh, they'll be top 10 easily, but they probably have a pretty good crack at being top 10.
Yeah. 14th on the year, I don't think is, maybe some of that is an easy schedule. Maybe some of that is shooting variance, but I think it's a pretty indicative number. Give or take 2 or 3 slots, maybe 17th is more, but I think middle of the pack defense is a realistic descriptor of what we saw.
They did things well.
Yeah.
There was a point in the season where it seemed like they did nothing well. And if you looked at the 4 factors or what they allow, they weren't doing anything well. They came
Yeah.
around in a big way. Next year, we get to see if these positive progressions mean something against or as a playoff team. That's very exciting. The
Yes.
stage is set. The leader, Scottie Barnes. He's one of the most impactful defenders in all of the NBA this year. I think full stop. He was one of the worst jump shooters in the NBA this year. He is a holistic star in my mind. He will make all NBA teams in the future in my mind. A down year because of the style of play that he played and a terrible year shooting the basketball. Where do you sit on the Raptors star, Scottie Barnes?
I think what he said in Media Day was incredibly apropos. He was like, this is a year of experimentation. We got to see what works. And implicit in that, which he didn't say, was we have to see what doesn't. And I think they found a lot of what didn't work. I'm very hopeful that they address that, or at least will ameliorate that with Brandon Ingram. We've both written about that. And when I asked him, okay, what worked then? Okay, buddy, you found what worked. What worked then, big guy? I liked his answer a lot. He's like, I got to dominate physically. It's like, yeah, I think that's what we found. Like all the, there was a stretch there for 3 weeks, 4 weeks where he was hitting everything from the mid range. All the mid post turnarounds were dropping. It's like, hey, that looks great. You can make a career out of that if you do that every single night. Kawhi Leonard, right? But when they stopped falling, I think it was pretty clear that that's not something you can build an offensive system around. And
Kawhi also needed Kyle Lowry because Kawhi's
right.
playmaking is just he's too scorer based, and so having someone supplement that. Yeah.
Yep, that's absolutely true. And for all of the success there, I was impressed with Scottie's answer saying, I just need to be the biggest, strongest bastard out there. And that's where the real success came, I think. Not from the mid-range. Mid-range is great. It's really nice to make strides in areas. It's a really nice thing to have. When that pull-up 2 is a 46% shot instead of 41, that matters. That's meaningful. That opened up a little bit of playmaking over the top towards the end of that stretch, which I think closed down later when he started missing them a little more. But, those are meaningful strides. But, I think he knows where he's most successful. It's been where he's most successful. And hopefully he can get back there next year.
The really important, I think what a lot of fans were seeing when Scottie eclipsed Pascal, right? And especially in when people thought about the late game process, what people were seeing was that Scottie finishes strong. And I understand why people immediately jump that because Scottie, when he gets to his spot around the bucket, he is nearly impervious to being dominated physically. Even if a guy sits 2 inches taller, 20 pounds heavier, Scottie still finds a way. Pascal has to finesse things around, and he can be put in really awkward spots where the shot. Scottie is just going up straight because he's like mano a mano. It is actually kind of hard to overstate how physically imposing he is. Now, that doesn't mean that he can just run to the rim whenever he wants. That doesn't mean the game is easy. But it does mean that when he's in the right spots, should he get there, you can expect really good things, consistently great things. He is extremely physical. And when he's put not in a position where the game is all about finesse and it's a little bit more about power, The transition, for example, is a great one. Transition is not so much a finesse game. It is straight lines and it is powerful finishes. The straight lines can be to the bucket or the pass to the corner, whatever it is, or the pass ahead. When he's allowed to play the power game, he's very imposing. And the Raptors, go ahead.
Guarding Pascal Siakam, the risk was like, oh man, I looked like a fool. Guarding Scottie Barnes, the risk is
I
like,
look like
oh
a
man,
boy.
I ruptured my spleen.
Yeah, that's a good point. And to that point, like post ups was where a lot of people went. And the interesting thing here is that Scottie is not super effective as a post up hub yet.
Yep.
He just does not yet have the finesse. And a post up hub, you do not give a guy the ball in the post explicitly to watch mid range jumpers. You
Yep.
give a guy in the post to explicitly get deep. And more important than anything else is not scoring the ball from the post, it is passing it. And we have not yet seen Scottie able to use that aspect. That this may be the best aspect of his game is his otherworldly ability to read the floor,
Oh yeah.
especially while a defense is moving. He just doesn't have the finesse yet to dominate and draw doubles at that level. And as we move forward, hopefully there's a better team around him. Maybe with Brandon Ingram on the team next year, Scottie, like there's potential for him to be guarded by worse players a lot more often, players he could dominate a lot more often, or even perhaps what happens with Karl Anthony Towns, what happens with a lot of players is that if you don't get the best wing defender, they start putting a big on you. And while Scottie struggled driving the ball against some guys, quicker guys, guys who can meet him at the spot, he will be able to drive the ball against bigs at a higher level, running roughshod into the lane. There's a lot of room for that offense to grow. And when I went and tracked all of his mid-range turnaround jumpers, I think at that time he was shooting like 52% on them, which was really, really healthy. That's like a really strong number. That was during his hot streak. And then it ended up being around like 43, 44%, which is fine as your third or fourth counter when the offense, you need to kind of get the
Yeah.
offense going. You need to save a possession, but it can't be like 6 times a game. It can't be that. That I think will improve over time. The process I think will get better as the hierarchy changes and shifts. And I think next year, like while Scottie disappointed, because on the whole, you say Scottie took more shots, had more of the ball, and he scored less, he assisted less, and he had more turnovers.
Yep.
Or that's not good. The steps towards like big time offensive star did not progress the way that people, the most optimistic of his fans, supporters, whatever, would have hoped or expected. That doesn't mean that progression wasn't made, and that doesn't mean that that progression won't show up later. It won't manifest in other things. He just needs a team that can put him in his strongest spots,
Yeah.
the same way that he can put guys in strongest spots. And he was still an above average playmaker out of the pick and roll. He still was a guy who positively affected the team constantly. Any offensive thing before we get to defense, Scottie Barnes.
The best playmaker he's ever played with is Fred
Yeah.
VanVleet.
No, it's Pascal.
Well, yeah, sure.
Oh,
I mean guard. I mean specifically guard.
actually,
Obviously,
you know what's
it's Pascal.
funny? Because when we were in the car, you said like you're better at me saying you're wrong than I am at you saying I'm wrong, and here we have it.
Well, no, I just meant guard. But because the point I'm trying to make is, Immanuel Quickley is very talented, but I think Scottie Barnes is not benefited by his talents, and the Raptors adding a real guard creator. Obviously that ship has sailed, but De'Aaron Fox or guys of that things of that nature, I think would benefit him in a way that we've just never seen because it just hasn't been available to him in the NBA. I think the Raptors could really, be cooking with gas for Barnes, finding a Kyle Lowry.
Special playmakers create different avenues of scoring that other people didn't see. I know Aaron Gordon, I believe, had a quote where somebody asked, like, who is the Aaron Gordon of the NBA? Like, that's waiting to
Yeah,
get to be in the perfect. I believe he said Scottie Barnes. Now, I think it's very lofty of Aaron to say, like, Scottie Barnes will be me,
yeah.
which is funny. But, like, Scottie
Scottie's
Barnes,
already better than yeah.
Scottie will, but also Aaron is a great facsimile of that idea of like when you have a special creator, suddenly the guy who is a little bit egoless, who will cut, who finishes a lot of stuff, that guy goes from scoring like 11 points per game and to 16, 17, and his efficiency actually jumped. And
Yeah.
Scottie, I think, is a prime. That's why I think Scottie will score more points next year than he scored this year. And I got a little bit of pushback on that because people were like, well, Brandon Ingram is coming in. There's less shots. And it's like, it's about the type of shots. It
Yeah.
really is. There's a
He scored
reason
more with
Scottie.
Pascal as his teammate last year than after he got traded.
Yes, and that's because down the row or down the line, you see easier matchups, catching the ball in better spots on the floor, less burden to create, more reactionary, opportunistic offense. And when you're a big bastard who overwhelms people, it's a lot easier to score when the team isn't loaded up against you, but somebody else. When you can physically dominate one on one. Because Scottie, while he didn't get doubled at the highest frequency, he stopped being guarded one on one in truth. You
Yeah.
start seeing the team shift his way. And that happens to good players, not just great players, but it's a meaningful thing he had to adjust to. Defense, yes. The defender, the won't be selected, but all defense level defender, Scottie
Mhm.
Barnes. Massive on off swings, and it's not just trickery of lineup data. When he steps on the floor, he elevates the defense in a million different ways. I talked about how he can like make Jonathan Mogbo a viable option because when Jonathan Mogbo was playing with other players and he switches out because he's a switch defender, it means that nobody's at the bucket. That is now a viable defense because Scottie can go bang around and clean that stuff up. Scottie can take on big jumbo wings and play deny defense and work teams into the back end of the shot clock. Scottie can be a weak side helper. Scottie can be in the gaps. He showed his defensive versatility in a way this year that we had not seen previously. He was great the year before in a more limited backline sweeper role, a disruptor off ball. And while he still has high hips and doesn't have quick feet at the point of attack and can get burned, his work and diligence, due diligence, whatever the hell it is, to make sure that he can close off passing windows, play deny defense, and as a star, do that. His impact is very real and looks like it could just ratchet up in accordance with talent, with the team's success. And I look at him now, his size, his willingness, how this guy doesn't end up with defensive accolades. And how he doesn't end up surpassing OG as perhaps the number one defender ever on this franchise. I I don't know how it doesn't happen outside of like a trade or leaving.
Yeah.
He took a step, man.
There were moments in that end of the year when the team wanted to lose. The coach was sitting the stars. Guys were getting rested. And he was hurt. Offensively, he was really struggling. He had every reason to not play defense as hard as he had been. And he just didn't take those. And it wasn't just effort. It was also moments where he would pre-switch to get a guy like RJ out of the action.
Mm-hmm.
And he didn't stop doing that. It's not hard to just be like, I'm in the corner. I'm just going to stay in the corner. We're down by 20. We want to lose. Most guys in the NBA, most of the most competitive people in the world would make that choice to just stay where they are. He did not. He continued pre-switching. He continued staying in the action. It was really, really impressive. Not just the success, but the commitment to the success, the sustained success. You read quotes from people who do terrible things. This is going to be weird. And when they're like, well, I know I shouldn't have, but to not do the thing that was eating at me to do, you need to convince yourself not to do it, not just once, but every second, forever, to not do this thing. Like people who assassinate famous people or whatever. It's like, I convinced myself 10,000 times not to do it. But then just once, I was like, I'm going to do it. And then they did. Scottie Barnes, to be great at defense, it's the same. You need to convince yourself every second. It's not just once. Be like, okay, now I'm good. You need to convince yourself to try harder than everyone. This second and then that second for a whole season. It's crazy how much work that is emotionally. And he put the work in when the context could not have been less catalyzing of that
Yeah.
choice.
That
Incredible.
that was the really interesting thing. He is a player who, uh, to the outside perspective, there's like a lot of mixed messages. Like you see little blips where he's like he leaves the floor early, like after
Yeah.
the Wembanyama game. You see like you can see Scottie Pout on the floor. Like you can
Yep.
see that stuff happen. You can see him completely just like he has even this season walked away from offensive possessions, just like left the Raptors
Yep.
4-on-5, and like that kind of stuff happens. That same guy, you would be like, oh well, then we've seen this before in malcontents, but that guy, he's waiting on the other side
Yeah.
slapping the floor like let's get into it. It's a really interesting juxtaposition. And sorry, I shouldn't that is not the whole the total of what he does. Like those are small
Yeah.
moments.
Of course. Of
um
course.
he he really impresses me with his dedication to the defensive side of the floor, and he impressed me with how he has figured out how to shore up his weaknesses while still kind of stepping into every play type and trying to be active. It's like Cooper Flag. Cooper Flag should not be climbing screens, so he doesn't. So he steps under the screen and jumps out at shooters and uses his length to kind of buffer this play type. Scottie Barnes used to be a guy who just would sit on guys and get beat. They'd turn his
Yeah.
hips, they'd get past him.
Constantly.
That he'll do that initially. He'll pressure the ball, he'll go overwhelm them, and then he'll back up. It's
Yeah.
it's a real adjustment he's made that allows him to not have to turn his hips, but to slide with them, use his big steps to cut off lanes, lines to the rim. He's made decisions that really elevate what he does as a defender. And to your point about the leadership thing, or to your point about like how he makes those decisions, chooses every second to be like an involved defender, he helps guys. He'll scram
Yeah.
switch him out, he'll pre-switch, as you said. Those guys know that Scottie Barnes, if they share the same side of the floor, he will help them.
Yeah.
It allows a different level of, if you're going to play high pickup point defense, you have to believe in what's back there. And Jakob and Scottie help a lot. And there's
Yeah.
a reason why it manifested in a better defense over the course of the season, because that belief and trust is important. You can't just blindly be like, I'm going to pick up full court and risk these lines to the rim, unless you believe that a guy can step in. And you can't step out and switch on guys unless you believe that if a screen comes back, that a guy will step out and switch for you. And Scottie never passed the buck, just was
Yep.
always willing to be the guy who stepped up.
Season
We
of
have,
trust earned and trust given.
yes, we're at almost 50 minutes. We've talked vibes, Darko, and Scottie. We should talk about another player now. Who do you got? Who's top of mind? Should it be the point guard, Immanuel
Yeah.
Quickley?
Yeah.
Okay,
That's next.
I'll start
Yeah.
because I'll let you take it home. Emmanuel Quickley possesses, and as you said, does not elevate Scottie Barnes. That is that is where a lot of the like hand wringing comes from, I think. And Emmanuel Quickley unfairly has not been able to get like a full season to try. And people were optimistic after his half season with the Raptors last year. And while personally I thought that was like mostly just an assist percentage bump that was, can be diagnosed easily with how the Raptors play their offense, he did make strides in like keeping the dribble alive, turning the defense, gnashing the pick and roll, like continuing to produce things. This season, he did not get that stride. He didn't get to do it for more than like 4 games at a time. So everything is kind of like disappointing around Emmanuel Quickley right now. However, that does not mean that the big time impact is not well within his grasp. Like it was a bad season for Emmanuel because he wasn't healthy. And when he was healthy, he didn't blow the doors off of anything. And he just signed his big contract. And was at the start of the season the point guard of the future for many people. And I think it would be wrong to say that that is consensus now. Many people are disillusioned of that fact. That's not a win for Emmanuel. However, perception is different than impact. And impact next year could be quite high based
Yep.
on some important changes. But as far as like what people expected of Emmanuel, He didn't get to do any of that. And that's what makes it really disappointing. Some of that is like stagnation of who he is as a player. A lot of that is injury, just unfortunate luck. Padding out those steps as a point guard didn't necessarily come the exact same way. He did improve on defense over the course of the year. That's meaningful. He shot the hell out of the basketball. Great, but not enough. It's just that push and pull of like, we see it, we want more. And that's what makes the Immanuel Quickley thing disappointing, but easy to be hopeful about, especially with Brandon Ingram. And, Trey and I talked about it. It was that play. It was that play, man. It's the Warriors run blind. They run the small pick and roll into blind pig.
Mm-hmm.
It's a great play, and it's how they utilize Draymond Green's lack of shooting prowess. He comes and effectively shorts the pick and roll, and Immanuel Quickley could be the sub in for Steph Curry, and you can throw the pass to Jakob Poeltl, and you can run off of that for a three, and that could be such an easy play. And it doesn't even have to be a three, but it could be an empty side pick and roll where the defense is rotating over into it, and it's the easiest 2-on-1 you can access. There's a reason the Warriors run it with their skill sets. It's just Quickley allows them to do many things by skill set. We are missing so much in application for Quickley. The hypothetical. Masai was on the phone. We saw it on Open Gym. He fits with Scottie incredible. That has not actually happened. It really hasn't. And that's where we sit. Disappointing through small fault of his own, but mostly just bad injury luck, and hopefully healthy next year to look at it.
It's not hard to see a winning team next year with a healthy Immanuel who just totally, he actually gets contact on his screens. He forms up around drives. He gets off the ball. It's not hard to envision that.
Mm-hmm.
Then again, it is theoretical.
Yep.
So, it's hard to make solid judgments one way or the other. Success can very well be there for him, but it is theoretical. It is still guesswork, which you don't want after a season and a half, after acquiring the guy. But that's how it is.
How old is Quickley coming into next season? I guess he'll
25?
I think he'll turn 27 next year. Oh, he's 25 and 305 days old. So he'll be 26 and a lot of change at the end of next season. That's not a death knell. That's not old. No. However, it's not young. We're at the point where you probably expect a player to be more or less what they are. However, Quickley, he doesn't have to get that stamp. And especially the skill set is just, that is the hypothetical part of it, is that we're sitting there looking at everything that should work and then questioning why it doesn't.
Yeah.
Because that was the sell and that was the pitch, and why hasn't it worked out the same way is, and we had a pretty good idea of who Scottie Barnes was a player. We had a decent idea of who Immanuel Quickley was as a player. Why isn't this immediately thought of? A wonderful synergy there. And where is your optimism scale that it's just like, if we get more, it'll be there? If that's the answer.
Probably low. This is like I should say though, my optimism scale is me guessing. But yeah, I think probably low at this point. Now that's not by no means does that mean Quickley won't be very successful on the team.
Yes.
Like there's ways to make guys work without the two-man action working. For example, in Quickley's first year, the Raptors ran a ton of staggered screens with a big small in there for Scottie. Because that really that was like an injection of sort of plastic dynamism without actually getting motion. And Scottie was phenomenal in those sets. They dropped off a lot this year. I think that's an easy way to sort of force the two-man game without having to rely on their synergy. There's ways around it, but I think a year and a half, we've seen probably 1,000 screens between the two of them, or maybe 800 or 700 or something. But there's enough tape, despite the injuries, that there's more evidence to the contrary at this point, which isn't by any means a death knell, but it's just what I think.
There's also like Steph is not the example. Maybe Tyrese Halliburton is a decent enough example that Tyrese, it's the play that Jacoby said was like his welcome to the NBA moment, his 77
Yeah,
skip, where he was like, I'm getting killed on screens. And
yeah,
Tyrese Halliburton is not a good dribbler. In fact, he's incredibly limited for his amount of usage and his size and all that kind of stuff. And yet he pings himself around the court as if he were a basketball. And the Raptors actually run 77 skip for Immanuel Quickley. And
yeah,
it gives you choices as an off ball mover who is also technically a primary on ball for the play. You know, the Raptors can use this stuff. The big difference between these things is your willingness to move and your willingness to unload from downtown. And I thought it was funny that I made the chop wood carry water joke, and then Emmanuel Quickly was like, I read it 4 times, and I was like, wow, let's go, dude, hell yeah. But what he said, the question I asked about getting his 3 point volume up, I thought he had like in my mind, and maybe I'm just schlub on the internet, but I thought he had like the perfect answer.
what do you
He
say?
was he was using the defensive side of the floor to he used it as I hate guarding this. It's
Mm,
so effective. Why aren't I doing this if I have the skill set to be doing this? Because he, and I didn't say this to him, but Emmanuel can't rise up over people. He has a low release. He has a low pickup point. He can't just pull, pull, pull. Kyle Lowry was a similar way, but Kyle Lowry did this by getting a lot of lift on his jump shot, which Emmanuel can't do. But Kyle also pulled early in transition.
yeah,
Kyle looked for unorthodox places to let it bang, and he did that. And Emmanuel Quickley is capable of not only pulling up in transition when available, but he can pull up 3 feet back from the line. Don't let the 3 point line be your line. Your line can
yeah,
exist elsewhere. Porzingis talked about this too, right? It adds a different level of spacing. They say, why do you stand this far? He says, I found I was mostly just as effective from this part back, and I can actually drag the defense out further. And the impact of how you pull the defense is where Quickly's quote went. He said, when I'm
yep.
guarding guys and I see how I have to step up and I see how it changes our defense, then I look at what I can do as a guy. To me, illuminating. To me, good. And I can't imagine the coaches feeling any other type of way. They'd be like, "Yes, you're an incredible shooter. Let it rain." RJ Barrett,
He was
anyone?
like 30th or something in pull up threes per game. He was near the leaderboard there. Catch and shoot threes per game. He was like 100 something and change. That's where he's got to crank them. And that's, I mean, you catch from 32 feet and you're unguarded. I don't care. Launch it. Like that goes into it too, right? But
It's he doesn't
there's
have
more.
good shot prep.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Yeah. He's
that's
not.
that, no, that's harsh, but
No, no, no. He's not. He's catching upright and surveying, holding the ball under like that. Don't catch upright, man. You're not running the set. Jakob Poeltl. Jakob Poeltl's the point guard, baby. You just catch with your knees bent. But really, I think there is more. There's more to that. There's a lot of meat on the bone for Quickley. A lot of meat on the bone.
yeah, yeah, that's it. Because on the one hand, I'm fixating on pull up jump shooting when that's not as bad as the catch and shoot jump shooting because I think about how the Raptors are so limited as a pull up jump shooting team. I know you can change the geometry. However, quickly being the punch at the end of a million other play types is what elevates the floor overall. Good point. RJ Barrett, yes. Anybody?
Yeah.
RJ Barrett, I think a tremendous half season. The stats do not convey, I think, the willingness and the workload and the effort that RJ Barrett put into like the front half of this season because he carried a lot.
Yeah.
And he went from being a guy who was like hyper efficient on his usage and saw I actually believe in the catch and shoot 3 point shooting after about a season and a half of RJ Barrett in Toronto. The free
Mhm.
throws are obviously a worry. The big disappointment this year was that RJ Barrett did not finish the way that he
Yeah.
did as a Raptor last season. And that has a lot to do with the types of shots he was forced to take, the fact that this offense kept looking to him like, you have to take the hard shots because everyone else is taking like the flow, easy shots, and we can't always access flow. And he put on the hard hat every day and went and did the damn thing. There are no special things about his, there's no special indicators on his stats right now, right? Like we can read them out. RJ Barrett, how many games did we get this year? 58, wouldn't have qualified. He rested a lot down the stretch. 21 points per game, 5.4 assists, 6.3 rebounds, 2.8 turnovers. He and Scottie were the same there. 35% from three, missed a lot of pull-up threes this year, tanked his percentages. 47% from the floor, did not finish well at the rim. Everything about RJ's game, the progressions he's made as a playmaker, as an on-ball guy, he was still well above average as a pick and roll hub this year, which is a big thing. That kind of stuff immediately elevates into this really important secondary offensive player if he can simply get easier looks at the rim via cuts, via attacking closeouts, via transition, and he can make free throws when fouled. He has the talent, to me, to not be a guy who hovers around 55, 56% true shooting, but a guy who sits around 59, 60 if
Yeah.
everything clicks. And his willingness to get into the middle of the floor, to drive into the paint, that's a feather in his cap. It just needs to be more efficient. So he showed so much this year because he had opportunity. It's just we didn't see the stats to really like elevate this movement for him.
I think the first half of the season took a real physical toll on him.
Yeah.
And a lot of the churning duck drives where he meets a guy with his chest, but his little feet just keep on pushing that
Yep.
defender under the rim, those turn into he got pushed off the line and sort of looped like out of the body, like Immanuel Quickley layups, where it was like looping outside attempts. And he missed a ton of them.
Yep.
He I think physically lost some of the I am stronger than anyone sort of badge that he
This
had in the
actually,
beginning of the
as a
year.
quick important thing here, one of the first things he did as a Raptor was be guarded by Malik Monk and Steph Curry on that West Coast
Yeah.
road trip, and they
Yeah.
did pinch post actions. Think about who RJ played with this year. He
Yeah.
didn't get to bully small guys this year. That's an important change for efficacy at the rim. Guys stepping with
Yeah.
him. Yeah.
He the jumper 35% on the year. That's on from deep. That's great. I'll totally live with that from RJ. And if you look at just where everything settled, frequency, he took the same frequency of layups, floaters, threes, short mid-range, three-point range, didn't shift a ton. It was just, did you make your layups? That
Mhm.
was where so much of the season, I mean, his assist rate, boom, it skyrocketed. But it
Yeah.
was it was like so much of the year, his year was determined by, did you make your layups? And I think he should be able to get back there. Um, like Gradey Dick, who I assume we're going to be getting there soon. I just think there's a lot of the usage was so much higher than it's ever been in terms of not like the statistics, but just your role, your responsibility in creating for yourself, for others, understanding what your flow is. It was higher. It was more than it's ever been. And I think that took a toll, and that dragged down the latter half of both guys' years.
Well, it was what RJ laughed about when we were there when I said, and RJ laughed about it during training camp when I was asking about it because he cut so well in
Yeah,
2023-24 as a Raptor. It's like asking his teammates about cutting, and Immanuel quickly says RJ will cut if he thinks he can score.
yeah,
RJ, his usage percentage will always be decently high because he is an outcomes player. He
yeah,
will he will try to make the play whether it's 14 seconds on the shot clock or 6, and the ball ends up in his hands often enough that he's going to try and shoot it. The difference is, standing around for 6 seconds, moving a little bit, catching and finishing versus taking the shoulder, escape
Yeah.
dribble, reset and align to get your guy into the screen, get bumped off, go through like a dig, pick up the guy's back on you now, pushed out, trying to finish. It's just like that's the same usage. It's the
Yeah.
exact same usage. However, there's a lot more toll. And RJ, there's a lot of toll early on.
Yeah.
He had like a 29% usage at the start. He was just like, man, I'm playing with a lot of guys who, towards the end of the season, ended up making big steps and
Yeah.
found more comfortable with usage. But early on, it was like him and the guys, the back end guys, and just like, I guess I'm the one shooting it. And it affected things, obviously.
How many guys dribble through a stunt on the Raptors? Just RJ, right? Gradey.
Gradey dribbles through stunts, yeah.
Gradey
Scottie
doesn't
does
dribble.
too.
He'll just like hurl himself through a stunt.
Yeah, Scottie does as well. It's just Scottie doesn't get stunts so often as he does like real big time rotations into the gap. I think
Yeah.
is maybe, but also Scottie is not he can't dribble through a stunt really, and he doesn't get stunts that often really because he's not moving fast. You know,
Yeah.
like
Yeah. A
you
dig is a stunt can turn into a dig because they just get there.
yes. Whereas like RJ is the duck. He's moving
Yeah.
past it. Even like and you see like he goes from shoulder in the guy's chest to shoulder on the backside of the guy's shoulder to leaning to planting his left foot and turning. It's just like, yeah, different.
Strong.
Um I guess Jakob or Gradey. Which way do you want to go
Yeah.
with this?
I mean, if you don't mind, Jakob, I think pretty easy to say was the best Raptor this past year, right?
It's Scotty. Like or
Ha-
relative to oneself. He had his best
sure.
year.
No
Jak-
doubt. I think he like for all of the disappointments, steps back, injuries. Jakob was just cruising, man.
Jakob is great. Jakob is a very strong center in the NBA. However, it's too far field for me to say he is the best Raptor. I
He had a
simply cannot
great
abide.
season. He
He
had a
did.
great season.
Let's talk about it. Go nuts.
Uh, so you were in the bathroom, but I asked him on exit interview day. I got 3 straight questions to start. It was great.
Called in
I asked him
isolation.
about yeah. I called my own number and I cooked. And Jakob was not as complimentary of his own choices and delay. I was like, how would you rate your best season? And the ball was in your hands. How do you rate? He's like, it was okay. I think there's a lot of development I can make in terms of not making the right pass, but reading what's next, reading
Yes.
what that pass would lead to and what a better pass would have been based on what the first one would have.
He's
I was like,
so
man,
overrated as a playmaker, by the way.
it's not playmaking, it's decision making.
Okay.
Right, toggling like the first you've 2 guys running into handoffs. When do you toggle away from one towards the other? What side of the floor do you flip to? Who do you screen? There's a lot of those choices. Who do you toggle into back cutting rather than coming there? This isn't playmaking. This is decision making as a delay hub. And he's certainly not overrated there. He's excellent there.
We are locked horns on a semantic thing. And I don't think it's worth it for me. We have to move through stuff. I'll say quickly, I think he is not overrated as a player. He is a hub. He is extremely important. I like Jakob a lot. However, as a playmaker, I didn't hear at the time. It makes sense to me why he would have been disappointed with the passing decisions he made this year because I think that wasn't that big a strong suit of his. As a ball mover, as a screener, hell yeah, dude.
Totally fair. I'm not discussing his passing. And then I asked him how to get better at that. He's like, "Oh, I'll tell you how I can't get better at that. Practicing. You got to do it in games. It's the only way." Which you and I have talked about a lot, which I thought was nifty as well. He didn't actually answer. I was like, "How do you practice that?" He was like, "Well, you can't." So he's like,
Yeah,
"I'm gonna try, but it won't work."
you go to the off season runs and everyone's like, we're running delay through Jakob. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's gonna. They're like, set the screen and roll. Set the
yeah.
screen and roll.
Um,
Jakob, Go, wait, you still cook. The isolation is
Yeah, yeah,
yours.
yeah.
I'm interrupting.
I think I mean, he spent a lot of the year with the highest offensive on offs on the team. Did he end up there? He was close. Might have
I
been
think
Boucher.
Maybe Jared Rhoden or somebody snuck in.
Oh, I mean guys who sort of spent the whole, yeah, Rhoden, Boucher, then Poeltl. But 200 minutes for Rhoden, that's not like Poeltl had twice as many minutes as exactly +1, twice as many minutes as Boucher. That's really, really meaningful to me that he had the highest offensive on offs among
Yeah.
consistent rotation guys. He finishes everything. And when we talked about them being good in the pick and roll for centers, they weren't giving him good shots. He would catch 12 feet from the rim and they'd say, "Whew, better make it work, bucko." And he did. That sort of like the pump fake built into his gather Pinoy step, I think is the
Well, no, like it's the Pinoy step when you're like a live dribbler. But
yeah,
like
it was
But
I don't know
his
what.
isn't no, because the Pinoy step is that you're faking the shot. When Jakob does that, he's not faking the shot. The manipulation for him comes that he uses his dribble after the slew foot pivot, after the
Yeah, this
slide
yeah.
through. Like that's where, and this the exit interviews, I asked him about this move, and he was 2 years ago, and he was like,
Yeah,
"I'm not talking about that." But that's
yeah.
where people expect, because changing the pace, like everyone, the defenders chunk what they usually see,
Yeah.
and he is off rhythm. He is
Yeah. He
syncopated.
syncopates.
Oh, how often do people say syncopated at the same time? Not often. Um, he syncopates relative to all other rolling bigs, and that's why that catch, they expect him to put the ball down and continue, step through, then the ball goes down. It's a very subtle move, but he's exquisite in the footwork there. Anyway,
If
he's
you
elite.
look at the pick and roll aesthetics between another limited guard at creating for teammates, Fred VanVleet, with Serge Ibaka, who's his best pick and roll partner, and it was the same pass as what Quickley gives to. Yeah, it was the wrapping bounce pass in the slot, get it at the free throw line, or give or take some feet. Ibaka was a pull up. And it was great. It was a very successful pick and roll partnership because Ibaka was so terrific at hitting the like step into your pull up from that area. Poeltl turns it into a layup. And that's unbelievable, man. He's not given gold to work with in the pick and roll, but he turns it into points on the board, man. He does good work with that. Anyway, and he settled in defensively. He really got good at closing off the lanes for other people's mistakes. I think he was allowed to settle back a step or two behind where he was asked to and he was just way more comfortable recovering. He rebounded. He turned in phenomenal. To me, he is, along with Scottie Barnes, could not be more obviously ready to start and like lead a playoff caliber team.
Yeah, he shot better from the free throw line this year. That's important too for like late game
That
big
matters.
man, if you're playing that kind of stuff. But yeah, when looking at the play type stats, the Raptors were above average at one thing, and that's the roll man scoring. And there's nobody else that you can point to that is one of the most resounding home run stats, because you watch the games and you see it, and then it immediately makes sense. It's like, yeah, there's a reason why like Davion Mitchell was an effective pick and roll ball handler, and it wasn't because Davion Mitchell is so slick. It's because Davion Mitchell felt he had one duty as a pick and roll ball handler, and it was to get the guy who is able to mix metals and to create gold out of catching the ball in the middle of the floor, to
Yeah.
navigate rotations through his sly footwork, his effective push shot, his tremendous finishing. Like, all this stuff is just created because of also the screen he sets at the front end, the way that he allows the offense to run through him. He is imperative to almost every possession when he's on the floor. There is no bypassing, there is no passenger status. He is just there with his finger on the pulse. He's incredibly important. He's not too good to work on defense too, even as an older big. Sometimes that falls away. He was always an underrated quick mover. from age 21 to 26 or 27. His feet are a little bit slower now, but he's getting used to that, and he kind of accommodates his own limitations, and the team learned it too, as you said. He is a very strong center in the NBA. Top 10, like Masai thought, probably not top 10, but he's
Close
damn
enough,
good.
though. Yeah.
Close enough, certainly.
I think the impact is what you need from a starting center. Like,
Yes.
I don't, ranking doesn't move me. Like, he's just ready to do what you need from
Yeah,
a center.
who gives a shit? Yeah,
One
there's
stat I
40
do
All
have,
Stars
though.
every year.
Yeah. One stat I do have, everyone really likes the rim protection stats. And I think Pirtles have fluctuated a lot. And it
That's
looked
because
like
those
they
stats are
were,
bad.
well, they're not that bad. I think they
No,
were,
I'm saying like I think they measure. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
they come out in the wash to be pretty in an imprecise way accurate. If you ever took chemistry, precision is like the level of description, and accuracy is, so like the precision is like 17.22222, and accuracy is like, well, no, the number is 21, not 17. It's like that. Anyway, so yeah, you miss, but it comes out in the wash. For a long time, for a couple of years there, towards the end of his San Antonio days, his ability to force misses at the rim were scooping up and up and up, which was bad, right? That big negative number, -10, those big sexy negatives of forcing misses were not, where they were dragging away. And last year he was -6. The year before -4. This year -5.5 of what guys shot within 6 feet of him versus what was expected. It's holding stable at a very solid rim protector. Not the league's best, but he can hold guys off at the rim, which is important. And it looked like wasn't going to be the case as he aged into this contract, but is.
There's a few guys who like for those stats. I It's the same way like Jakob. I think through the first like 15 games of the season was ranked as one of the best isolation defenders in the league, and it's just like this means nothing, man. I don't like. But the defensive field goal stuff. I think there's like five bigs who you can reliably expect like that to help out. And then I think it's important to supplement this kind of stuff with like, okay, Jakob, how do you affect how often teams shoot at the rim, right? Like
Yeah.
how often do they go there? Frequency, Jakob, like teams shot less at the rim when he's on the floor, right? And do they shoot worse at the rim when he's on the floor? Looking around, they shoot worse at the rim when he's on the floor. That is his job. You see these wide ranging impacts, and you mix that with like the smaller stats that measure discrete things, and then you look at Jakob helps out on the defensive glass, and you look that he affects misses all over the floor, and it's those types of misses, not just like 3-point shooting. It's just good. He's just a damn good player and has been and is amenable to the culture and is perfectly fine being a garbage man or being a fulcrum for a quarter at a time. It's just, he's good, man. I'm extremely happy that he's on the team.
It's
I do
important
not,
to have.
I don't want to disillusion myself with, like too much team building towards 2028 and thinking like,
Yeah.
oh, we could have traded him this year. I could give a shit, dude. It doesn't matter. Future player, Gradey Dick. Are we moving on?
Yeah, you start with this one.
Okay. Gradey Dick, the young man that he is. Here we go. Gradey Dick is a fantastical player who did a lot of impressive stuff as a scorer this year. And he also hit the sophomore wall like you wouldn't believe. He had an incredibly tough time navigating the back end of the season. He was asked to do things that uh, most second year players are not able to do or do not get the opportunity to do. He had Darko say, I want Gradey to guard every player in this league. They pushed him like a shy boy at the school dance into the arms of a woman. And that was how they got him to defend. Come on, you can do it. They threw him out there and he died repeatedly. There is so much good with Gradey Dick, and there is so much bad. If
Yeah.
he simply shores up the bad into like, not great, he could be an extremely effective player because he warps the offense almost as much as Jakob.
Yeah.
Gradey demands a lot of defensive attention. He changes the line of how the defense interacts with the offense. He occupies the weak side in a way that nobody else on the team does, not even Immanuel Quickley. And he, as you said, will hurl himself. And while the efficiency numbers aren't great, as a driver, he comes out positive because of the volume and the willingness, and he goes to the line and shoots a really great percentage. He is of utility. It just has to be on the other side of the floor. That's Gradey,
Uh,
the opener.
I am very confident that it is going to settle in. The bad will improve. I'm not confident it will happen within the next 2 or 3 years. It might not be until he's 27, 28.
A second contract stud is what we're
It
predicting here.
seemed like I'm very sure he's going to be an excellent player in the NBA. It's hard to know when that's going to turn. You said he didn't impact the offense quite as much as Jakob. Could not have been more accurate. He had the second highest offensive on-offs on the team. And that is despite, among consistent rotation guys, that is despite a real fall off in the second half of the year. He was leading by a mile for the majority of for the first half of the year. He was just way, way in front. He does stuff that no one else does on the team.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, he is helped by context, but he turns static, sludgy offense into movement, into defensive reactions, into drives, into paint touches. He is not a shooter. He is an offensive chains mover. It's really, really impressive. The number of guys in the league who do that are minimal. It's really not like good teams have a couple. Good teams have more than a couple sometimes. The Celtics have like 5, right? But it's not, it's a limited number. Teams want them. Gradey Dick is one. The bad, you hope will solve itself, but the good is uniquely good to this roster context.
He was asked to take a lot of difficult shots. And as far as like unguarded threes, I think he shot 46% this year. The
Yeah,
catch and
great.
shoot stuff, his pull up three is not where people expected it. It's not where I expect it to be. It's not caught up. I think it's a physicality thing. I think his body, like, and he wants to get bigger. He wants to stay stronger. I think the type of jumper, his mechanics, it requires a lot of strength over the course of an 82 game season.
Yeah.
After getting jockeyed around and bullied every possession. His shooting talent is really high. He doesn't have the most consistent mechanics. There's a lot of moving parts, but his shooting talent is really high. And those moving parts allow him to access a lot of different types of shots. When things are easy, he's elite. He's an elite spot up player per synergy in the NBA. He isn't elite off screens just yet, but that's in his points per possession, not the team's overall. He does get bullied and jockeyed around. However, the important thing here is that somebody's meeting him 30 feet away from the rim. The ramifications of that as an offensive player are actually quite large. And the fact that he can,
especially in delay.
especially in delay, the fact that he can stand 18 feet away from the ball and the defense is like, this second year player, go fight him.
Yeah.
That's a huge deal because Jacoby may be a guy who these guys, they're 1 year apart. They could play many years together. Jacoby could surpass Gradey as a percentage shooter for many years. Many years. However, that movement and the amount of like the defense gives such a shit about where Gradey is, what Grady's doing. That is a special thing. And it could fall away if Gradey never harnesses everything. And the Raptors could have to look another way if Gradey is getting killed constantly on defense and it never improves. There is room for it to be bad. However, as you said, confidence in an excellent player, confidence in a strong player, for me, still high. For you, obviously, still high. Are we missing anything with Gradey? I think the finishing comes around as well. I think he has unbelievable touch. I think he will be a positive finisher at some point in his career. Don't know how soon that is, but I believe in the touch. and the
I mean,
willingness
he
to
just
post.
gets the attempts. Like he gets to the rim and he's gonna get him up. How many guys, when they're out of control at the rim, just gather and kick out? Whereas he's just like, I'm gonna hurl myself at a guy, stabilize in midair, swoop into my weak hand, and get a layup attempt. And statistically, that is better. Like it doesn't really matter if you're bad at it. If you get a ton of layups up, that helps an offense.
Yes.
Like a bad layup, 60% from the field. Like that's good in the grand scheme of things. We did miss though how bad he is on defense. We said he was bad. I think we didn't discuss quite how harmful and detrimental. Maybe let's give just a touch. I'll let you what makes him so bad at defense?
Okay, so Gradey, we talked about how RJ has those duck drives
Mm-hmm.
where he has to create this wider angle around somebody. Gradey does not create wide angles as defender. He had, and which is disappointing because I thought even though he doesn't have quick feet, he certainly doesn't. He has heavy feet. That he would be able to create wide angles because he's not short.
Yeah.
He doesn't have a massive wingspan, but it isn't short. He has the size, provided he can put on the weight, and he did at the start of the season before playing a lot of minutes and losing it, and then hitting the sophomore wall. That was maybe the most disappointing thing, was that his defensive year started off better in year two and finished abhorrently, whatever it is. He doesn't make guys take wide lines. He has heavy feet, so he can be displaced at the point of attack and create driving lanes quickly. He can die on screens because of that physicality. And also, guys, if they want to displace him in isolation, not to get to the rim, but simply to move him out of their vicinity, they do so quite easily. All of these things culminate into Gradey being a guy that teams look for and want to identify to place in actions. And the Raptors did not care enough this season to be a team who scoops him and saves him out of actions with regularity. They said, as I said, it's
Sink
the
or
boy
swim.
at the dance. Throw him into the arms of the
Yeah.
dancing girl. He does not know how to do it. That's just what it is. He got picked on, and especially in with juxtaposing him against Jacoby or Ochai or Jamal or any one of those other guard defenders, he was just worse by
Yeah.
several orders of magnitude. And the trickle down effect of that, the five guys on a string defense that everyone wants to play, Gradey has never been on a string. And so that disrupts everything. He is detrimental to the defense at this point.
And it's on or off ball. Like get picked
Yes.
on, but even if he's not getting picked on, he's not. The closeouts are like he just no matter where he is, it gives the offense meat, which is tough. Which is tough.
I think the off ball stuff should come around sooner rather than later. The on ball stuff is where those limitations will always impact him, and he needs to figure out. Like there are slow footed guys who figure it out. They play
Yeah.
their angles. Like how the hell does Kyle Anderson and Joe
I was
Ingles
gonna say Kyle Anderson.
how the hell do Kyle Anderson and Joe Ingles make it in the league? You know,
Yeah.
they play it perfectly. They scout, they watch a lot, they understand tendencies so that they can beat a guy to their spot. And if the guy takes the other place, it's changing and informing the shot diet. They can catch up to it, all that kind of stuff. And those guys, they put weight on their body.
Yeah.
Ingles a lot more than Anderson, but Anderson has always been a guy who's kind of hung around with unique. What's some sort of physicality. It's like long but tensile, whatever the hell it is. He always has been able to hang in like that, and that's Gradey needs to find roots to impact that way. We'll
Yeah.
see if that happens. It's hard though. Some guys just
Stamina too.
don't get there. Yeah, especially since he's running all over the damn place when he's on the other side. Like, yeah.
Yeah.
Anyway, any final thoughts?
No, we covered. I'm so excited for his year next year. I'm so excited.
Masai name dropped him and was like Gradey. It came off
He
as a
name dropped him.
very.
They know each other. They work together. They're
I
not just
know.
strangers.
Isn't that cool? Like your friends know your other friends
Yeah,
because we're
exactly.
all such good friends with these guys. Yeah. Um. So we have to chunk people together at some point,
Hmm.
but we need, I will say, if anybody wants really deep dives on Jamal, Jonathan, Jacoby from myself, in the past however many episodes of the podcast, I've done like 40 minutes on each of them. There's actually a video breakdown on Jacoby. There's a lot of stuff on Jamal and Jonathan. But these guys each deserve their own thing, but we have to start chunking guys together at some point. Of Jamal, Jacoby, Jonathan, who do you want to talk about first?
Jacoby, probably.
Okay. I'll set the scene. Jacoby
Yep.
Walter, and we'll give the stats because I love making this point that Jacoby is not a stats darling. If you were a guy who is a fan of the Portland Trailblazers or something, or you're just like a league wide writer and you're looking scanning stats to try and find like who's interesting, Jacoby wouldn't pop at all. But if you watched him play, then you'd be like, ooh,
Yeah.
wow. And that is a very fun place to be. Jacoby had my probably second favorite availability of the exit interviews.
Yep.
I loved the answers he gave, hearing about how proving yourself as a defender is meaningful, especially since he did it. God, did he do it earlier? That is where I'd like to start with Jacoby, actually, is the defense. Has trouble navigating screens. That shows up in play type data, that shows up on the film, and you'll see it consistently. But this is the difference to me. You do not get to take a three on Jacoby Walter in isolation. I think he I think people attempted 5 this whole year. Do you know why? You can't force misses necessarily. That isn't the logic. But you can dissent. You can make sure that the shot diet changes. Jacoby Walter is in your jersey. Jacoby Walter is able to stick with guys and manage a level of physicality at the point of attack that I really would not have been able to predict. He's been so sticky on ball. That is really impressive. He is one of the best isolation defenders on the Raptors, and he's done it stepping in as a rookie. And he will put on weight. He did this year, 8 pounds of
Yeah.
muscle, he said, during the season. That's impressive. That he might come back after the summer huge then, quite frankly. He is really impressive at that feat. The Raptors drafted 2 guys this year who are really impressive in isolation, Jonathan Mogbo and Jacoby Walter. Mogbo, it would have been more predictable to expect
Yep.
that. Walter has really easy jumper mechanics. It's not surprising that he shot 40% on catch and shoot threes or on threes overall through the back half of the season. He is like just looks like so easy a 3-and-D guy as a baseline who potentially could go for more based on what he did at Baylor. We'll see. He's fun. He's really fun.
One of my favorite pieces of the year that I wrote was his first game. I just watched him really closely, and because he was coming off that injury, and I don't know if I've ever seen a guy play as nervous as he played in that game. It was just he was moving constantly, often for the worse. It wasn't like well timed cuts. It was just I gotta be moving, like gotta his feet. He wasn't forming up, but he was drifting around, not to open passing angles, but just because he had the fire in his feet. And it just from where he started to where he ended, the level of composure on both ends, it was incredible. The season he had, really, really impressive rookie year. Like defensively, he is slight, but he is strong. He closes space in an instant. He is a flash athlete at closing that gap to contest a shot or on a closeout. Impressive mechanics into his mid-range pull-up. That's
Yep.
always available. Um, Catch and shoot three, really, really solid. And I loved his defensive chemistry with Jamal Shead too. Just like it's nice when you can see a guy have chemistry. Like guys have their games, and it's nice to see it form up around another thing,
Mm-hmm.
change to suit what else is there. It's not always there. Guys don't always form chemistry with other players. We talk about it a lot, but some people are just who they are all the time, no matter what. Really nice to see how he played
Jeff
alongside
Goldblum,
his fellow rookie. Yeah, exactly. Um, Phenomenal year.
incorrigible. I thought the really interesting thing with Jacoby is that He does have easy mechanics, and
Yeah.
he is rapid at times. However, he never got past anybody. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah, not one.
he has such a limited dribble that I do wonder, because his first step is certainly not bad. It's certainly not it's not a bad first step. It can be quick at times. It's just he's not able to get past guys' hips, and especially not off the bounce. Hardly even ever off of the triple threat. But when he has a live dribble, Will Lou said it, like that offensive imagination.
Yeah.
Um, he tries things. And I think he shot 22% on his pull-up threes this year. It's a hard shot. He's a rookie. Increasingly young men are coming into the NBA and being thrust into difficult spots. And like when S and I went through, we were asked like how many guys have shot 35% from three the first 2 seasons and then been really good after. And
It's
the
a
list
lot. Yeah,
the
it's a huge
list
number.
the list was like incredibly long with great players.
Yeah.
Not like Darius Garland is on there. And Darius Garland is one of the best shooters in the NBA, and the dynamism from which he shoots is like Jacoby. There is a dynamism to his shooting, not just the push shot game winner that he hit, but there is a dynamism to what he has to find to be reactive and get his own shots. Now he is very different from Gradey, for example, in that he doesn't attempt a lot of layups off his own bounce. He doesn't create a lot of stuff, but he is much better defensively. He is like the carpentry, the flooring has been laid down. It's very easy to see where he goes from here. And you know who gets to try things? You know who gets to improve over a 7-year course?
Guys who
Guys who win minutes, guys who play defense, guys who do all that
yeah.
kind of stuff. If Gradey, for example, and I still think Grady's a better prospect than Jacoby, but like if Gradey never comes around on defense, he might not get the minutes. He might not get the cachet. Jacoby, pretty easy to see him just being around no matter what, impacting and going into the lab every single offseason, coming back with more, coming back with more, coming back with more.
I
You
think
should be excited about
Gradey,
him.
like you said, better prospect. I think there's a higher chance of Gradey falling out of the rotation next year than Jacoby falling out of the rotation.
There's a yeah, you could quibble, but it wouldn't shock me. I'd be like, but it wouldn't shock me because I know the Raptors really like Grady, like
Yeah.
they quite enjoy him. But he's maybe more than Darko does. They're like, no, we really believe in Darko's. Like, I
Yeah.
can't keep having my defense blown up, man.
Yeah.
Uh, any other Jacoby things?
No. That's a great year.
Exciting. Yeah, people should be very excited. And there's also like the same thing with Ochai is that there's a Jacoby Gradey dynamic there, possibility in the future that they help one another. Gradey
Yeah.
is far more dynamic offensively, which can allow Jacoby to settle into a calm, efficient role. And Jacoby can protect Gradey through matchups and that kind of stuff. There's a possibility for that. Jonathan Mogbo, Jamal Shead, you got a choice here?
Yeah,
Jonathan.
let's go to Jonathan, drafted earlier. Really fun defensive athlete, man. He has
Yes.
this thing where his targeted hands, I don't even know if this is a thing, but just when he's in the air and someone's trying to get a pass around him, a lot of guys they just wave their hands blindly. Sometimes the hand will hit the ball, sometimes it won't. He just has this reaction time where like he just gets his hands on the ball when he's even in weird positions when he jumps early. He is a really fun defensive playmaker. Um, and he'll make mistakes. I mean, you'll see him get out of position, but he does a lot well on that end that aren't expected from defenders. Um, really cool, fun defense in a lot of ways. Offensively, got to find a way to impact.
He was
I think
really bad.
I think his offense is almost where Grady's defense is. I
Agreed.
think though, like he can dunk. And he dunked a lot more on the latter half of the season. He even told me that Darko explicitly was like, "Buddy, you got to dunk more," and he was like, "Okay, I will." that's better. I think that alone makes his offense better than Gradey's defense, but a real negative that he's got to figure out.
49% true shooting is abysmal. You know what I
I'll be
mean?
back in 1 second. You keep
Yeah.
going.
49% true shooting from Jonathan is abysmal, especially for the types of shots he takes. That is the trouble of it all. And like Lewis said, figuring something out on offense is just such an imperative. It is so important because everything clogs down and everything gets way more difficult when Mogbo is out there. And even with that, like he did a much better job shooting the basketball this year than a lot of people would expect it. He shot better from three. He improved immensely from the free throw line. That kind of stuff is important and shows an ability and a malleability to improve that stuff going forward. However, the live dribble danger, it's so not there. And it's there a little bit more when he gets to occupy the role of a big and he gets to work through delay and he gets to be a little bit of a hub. But there is a fall off with him as a screener. As a decision maker, he's fine enough. But if you're running those actions, him rolling into space after them, there's not enough punch there either. He just isn't offering anything important offensively, and there's no roadmap to him doing it unless we see progression of his skills. His offense is really in a bad spot right now. However, that doesn't mean he can't get to a very important place. That doesn't mean he can't improve this kind of stuff, ameliorate the bad things into the mediocre ones, get mediocre ones into passable, get the passable stuff into good, dunk the hell out of the basketball. I mean, Montrezl Harrell lived in the league for many years and he wasn't even good defensively. And then, as Lewis said, like an incredibly fun defensive athlete. He stuck with guys that I think people would have thought he has no business sticking with. He was incredibly impressive, stepping out. He was mistake prone, I guess, off ball. He does need to help out on the defensive glass more often, not only in that he will help close out possessions, but that if he gets the ball, he is a good push pace guy that will enhance offense going forward and allow him to be a little bit more important in that way. But he just was able to survive against truly elite on-ball players, and he can improve as a low man, and there's a lot of fruits to be plucked defensively yet for him, but he won't get to do that defensively if he doesn't figure some stuff out offensively, which is what we're waiting on, basically.
Do you see him? I was listening, by the way.
Yep.
Do you see him in the rotation to start the year next year?
Really, it depends. Like, if a guy like Derek Queen gets drafted by the Raptors, Asa Newell, someone like that, he
Yeah.
could get leapt. Like that's really in the cards. He isn't guaranteed anything, even Masai, he was talking about like Jonathan Mogbo, we need to see something, and I'm pretty sure he talked about him at the same time as Battle. This is pick 31. You don't want
Yeah.
to be lumped in with guy who got onto the summer league roster and like credit to Battle for finding his way through it and getting the contract, but Mogbo should be, sitting in a higher plane, right? Um, Jamal Shead will play next year. We know that much. Jakob Poeltl will play next year. Jonathan, it would be way more fun if Jonathan put himself in like, yeah, there's no question. Now, again, I like Jonathan. I
Yeah.
liked the draft pick. I've been disappointed with some stuff I saw, but I like him as a prospect. So when I say these things, I don't mean to be too harsh, but uh, he has to figure some stuff out to
Yep.
validate this stuff. It's just that's what it is. No ifs, ands, or buts.
Yeah. Picks up his dribble a lot. Jamal?
Jamal Shead. Jamal Shead, you are more of a point guard optimist than I am. So you should go first.
Yeah, I mean, I think Jamal really is limited in the types of shots he can create for himself.
God, is he likable though, hey?
Yes, the nicest guy. One of my favorite interviews I've done in the NBA is with him. Um, really fun to just watch film with and talk with, and just really like you talk to him, you think he's like 35. He's just a very aware, like kind soul in a way that not a lot of 20-year-olds are. Not the kindness, the awareness, I think. Um, but yeah, so offensively, I mean, like he doesn't create anything for himself other than the floater. He added some layups towards the back half of the year. The jumper came around to the extent he trusted it. I mean, statistically, it wasn't amazing, but he trusted it. He turned to it. But he can get past guys. He can get 2 feet in the paint. And that is enough that you can build from that. Like, that's a real weapon. You can build a lot out from that foundation. You saw his little like early beat pass to the like that spray to the corner on his drive. Pretty good weapon to create a shot. Like, there's stuff. Even though he's limited offensively, there's real stuff there.
The quickness was real at the NBA level. That's extremely important for any guard to validate. He knows how to utilize his quickness. He isn't just like a straight line quickness guy. He can mix and match speeds. He was like he did the college thing. And the important thing is the jumper. It's incredibly important. It's meaningful that he was a much better catch and shoot shooter at the NBA level than he was at the collegiate level. Real strides were taken. The pull up stuff, there's not a huge amount yet, but that probably won't be his game. If he wants to be like a starter level player, then that has to be there. But that's already pick 45. You know, a lot of guys his size, like Chris Dunn, Jose Alvarado, who are both a little bit bigger. Actually, I think those types of guys who just make a killing defensively, which Jamal does not yet, and hopefully does. Those guys also figure out how to bang triples. Jose figured it out earlier, which means that Jose got to sign contracts and Chris didn't, which means that Chris did not get to sign contracts and be like as guaranteed a spot. And Chris really, even as the 4th or 5th overall pick, filters through the back of the league and still found his way. But if Jamal wants a linear path in the NBA, he needs to shoot the basketball well, because the unique on-ball quickness and the ability to like navigate some stuff, it's good and fun. But when a team wants to be good, they will not hand you those possessions. No way, no way in hell. And he needs to add efficiency and punch because, again, Jamal had the prodigious reputation coming out of college. But the NBA is different. And I know people disagree with me on this, and it's okay to disagree about players. I do not think Jamal was a strong defender this year. I do not think so. I think he struggled at a lot of stuff. And even if he gets good at some of the on-ball stuff, small guards have a tough time. Jamal is extremely likable. He has clearly shown he can improve. He's improved at really important things. He can hang in the league, but it's not easy for a small guard. And in spite of all of that stuff, he had a really strong rookie season. He deserves a ton of praise for what he did.
I don't know how many people. I don't think it's easy to argue he had a good defensive year. I think it's
most people aren't trying to argue it the way you may try to argue it. I mean, like I get feedback, and listeners, all that kind of stuff. Their opinion is valid. If they like defense is very subjective. You know what I mean? It's okay to think Jamal is good.
He had high highs. He had low lows. He had the worst on-offs for the opposing free throw rate on the team, like that. He just hacked the heck out of guys, trying to make plays, trying too hard sometimes to make plays. And a lot of the in your jersey stuff led to turnovers or, guys negative dribbles, but a lot of it also led to blow-bys or fouls or, I the same as his offense. I'm a believer in the foundation of his defense, but it's just not there yet. I do think though that he can play bigger. Like on offense, it's if he isn't a point guard because he's not getting those touches, he's got to make his meat elsewhere, right? His jumper. His defense, I do think that if it pans out the way it could, he can fit pretty well anywhere alongside anyone because he rotates early. He reads passes to the roller. He had a lot of steals as the third guy into the pick and roll because he just read the pass and ripped over there and got there with no business being in the pick and roll. Like that, you don't need to be. You can play any position and like make your meat, right? He's a strong dude. You try to
His
move
off
him,
ball stuff was his biggest positive as a defender, I think. Even
yeah,
though the on ball stuff is clearly where all the attention is.
yeah, yeah. So I'm a believer in the foundation in both places, and I think of the Jacoby, Jamal, Mogbo, Jamison quartet, there's a real path to him having the longest career with the highest highs, because he just
Wow.
has like that defense has a punch in a way that I don't think anyone's but Mobo's does, but he doesn't have the negatives in a way that Mobo does.
Yeah. For me, it would be Jacoby with a bullet still,
Oh, Jacoby.
I think.
I mean, if they go the way that I think the median outcome, Jacoby has the best career by far. But yeah,
Yeah. But Jamal was 45th. Like he's already, we saw Marquise Noel,
yeah,
you know, it fell apart immediately and he's a fair bit smaller than Jamal, but Marquise Noel was like a very impressive college guard who
yep,
he talked his talk, and like I don't mean that in a bad way, but he was like, I can do it. I'm that guy. And it just there was no shot of it ever. It never
yeah.
existed for a second. And a 45th overall pick is guaranteed nothing in the NBA. Nothing. It
In
can fall to the wayside immediately. And Jamal hung in and will continue to do so, I believe.
in the Davion Mitchell trade as well.
Yeah, yeah, technically, yes.
That
Um,
Jalen McDaniels trade gave Jamal Shead and then 2 second rounders this upcoming draft.
and one of the second rounders went out the door for Brandon, the
That's
Raptors'
right.
second
That's
rounder.
right. That's right. That's right.
But the Raptors still have Portland's second rounder
Yeah,
from the
they
Kings
still have
trade.
Portland. Yeah.
Well, that's just a testament to how good a player McDaniels is. He just brought back such a high return. Um, Ochai Agbaji, he's had a fantastic season relative to
Yeah.
where he was. The best, perhaps. I'll let you
Yeah.
lead because you wrote, I think, the best article on Ochai this season.
Oh, thanks, man. Yeah, that jumper is so trustworthy right now. Um, I do think his defensive punch is just not where it needs to be for a player of his role on a
Of
good
course.
team. Um,
Exciting thing
offensive,
for next year, just as a quick
yeah,
thing, rubber meets the road. Oh, is Ochai like like great stats guy on a bad team? Which happens. There's like 7 guys every year who do what Ochai just did, and like 2 of them go on to do it on a good team the next year. If Ochai does it on a good team next year, ooh, we're cooking with gas, baby. Got a stew going.
yeah. I mean, if you just look at guys who had the most efficient shooting seasons, like who points per shot attempt, it was Jakob, and then like Boucher and Olenek, bigs, and then it was Ochai, right? That's
60% true shooting. Strong.
that's crazy. And he doesn't get possessions. He just finishes. He's a pure finisher in cuts, in jumpers. But it wasn't just corners. He started the season because his jumper was so limited last year, and even coming
Hmm.
out of training camp, he was just the corner. And you could even see him drifting up into those elbow extended threes a month into the year, and it was like, oh, he's still slanging them. And then by the end, he was doing that like Klay Thompson thing where he'd like fade around a pin down, and turn that pin down into like a flare type thing and just bang them for it. Was his jumper made crazy strides. It was incredible, and he ended up shooting half his shots from deep.
39.9%.
Yeah, and it was 39 above the break, 40 from the corner. It like man, just what a year at the rim. He had a great year. He got to the rim more than he has over his career, other than his little stint with the Raptors, but he just made everything. He dunked a lot. The cuts were there. Man. Now, obviously, it's the easiest role to fulfill in the NBA, right?
He had
You
the he
don't,
had the easiest job on the floor every time he was on the floor, yeah.
You don't create a lick. And this is on a team where everyone wants to not create a lick. No one wants to do the work. Everyone wants to have the work done for them. He was the best at it. How does that work next year? And, if he was so strong defensively that, you're saying, well, great, you don't need to create a lick, but it's not there. You can envision a path where Jacoby, Gradey, Brandon take the minutes. It's very possible that Ochai just doesn't get the run he got this year. Now I don't think that's likely, but it's far, like you said, from guaranteed that this is just repeatable next year. But just purely not predictive, just descriptive. What a year, man. I'm so happy for him because he was truly, after that summer league where it was like, come out and show it, and he showed nothing. After he was with the Raptors, the summer league, he didn't have a guaranteed spot in the NBA for long. In fact, it seemed likely that he wasn't going to be in the league, but he turned it around. His entire career changed based on
That's
what he had this year. That's incredible.
This year, I think, is more for Ochai than it was for the Raptors. 27 minutes per game probably
Yeah.
won't be there next year. The Raptors are going to be in a bit of a quagmire as far as like, how do we even price this guy? How do we offer an extension when we
Yeah.
clearly want both Gradey and Jacoby to be much better than Ochai is, right?
Yeah.
But Ochai, no matter what happens with the Raptors, he's proven himself as an NBA player in a way that he just wasn't close to doing. And you don't, like, it used to be that if you believed in Ochai, you'd have to kind of gas his defense in a way that I didn't think was, I didn't think it was, not that it was dishonest, but it just wasn't true. It was like,
Yeah.
like you'd really have to
It's
act like
honest. It's just not true.
you'd have to act like he had potential to be a ball stopper and all that kind of stuff. And that wasn't true last year. Although he did get assignments, it just wasn't true. And
Yeah.
this year, I mean, he got assignments again. And like he's not a high level defender, but you don't even have to do like he's doing this kind of stuff. You'd be like, look at him shoot the hell out of the basketball. He's one of the highest players on defense. So he runs out and he finishes in transition. Look, he's making a cut. Look, he lifts and fades and drifts properly. He's shooting more of the more important 3-point shots on the floor. He's doing things. He doesn't disillusion himself of what he's supposed to be doing with the ball. He simply shoots it or moves it on. He was shot 60% from true shooting. Just like almost 50-40 splits from the floor.
Yeah.
Top quality. The role will not be there probably next year. But for Ochai, I don't know how it shakes out. I'd love for him to stay on the team. To be there. He's really well liked. He's incredibly
Yeah.
handsome.
I really like talking to him too.
He's
Very
nice, dude.
enjoyable player to chat with.
He comes across as like one of the kindest people you've ever met. Some people
Earnest.
earnest, yes, a depth of care seems to come
Yeah.
off of
Yeah. Depth of care
the
is great.
interactions. Yeah, really good guy, and we'll see. But he had himself a hell of a season, man. He should be really proud of it. We've reached the glut of like, I guess you have Jamison Battle, Chris Boucher, Garrett Temple, AJ Lawson, Colin Castleton, Rhoden, Ulrich Chomche.
Let's go rapid fire.
Rapid fire. Chris Boucher, let's go there. Disappointed unless he comes back or something like that. And I don't mean to say he was supposed to have like a big send-off, like, thank you, Chris Boucher, for everything you've done. But it's just a little surprising he couldn't get a sub in and that final cheer. I was surprised.
I assume there was a conversation with his agent, and they said, look, we're not going to be here. You don't want us here. Let's not risk anything. Like, let's shut it down. I think both sides.
You think that's agent more than Chris?
I think both sides were amenable to what happened at the end of the year, where there's 8 guys available and he still doesn't play. That's not. It has to be. It has to be. And talking with other media members, the guys who have been around
the cabal
as well.
The cabal.
Just guys who know the way things work, they've been here a lot longer than I have. Assume that conversation happened with the agent. I don't think that was an insult to Chris. You and I have both said this. He is not what a rebuilding team is looking for. He should be a role player, intermittent role player on a good team. And I hope he finds that. There's not much more to it. He does a lot that is cool and fun. And the Raptors didn't want that this year.
Masai said that he gets calls about Chris every day during his availability.
Good. I'm
I think
sure that's from other people in the NBA that he's getting calls from.
Yeah.
I am sure of that.
As a quick thing, Chris Boucher, I've so enjoyed watching him as a Raptor. He is a very unique player, and maybe the conversation with the agent, whatever, Chris gives his body to the game every time he steps on the floor. He could never dog it. So,
yeah.
And that is commendable. And he is the last bastion of the championship team. That is all very important. Jamison Battle, who you liked more coming out of the training camp than I did, and you definitely that's a W. That's a feather in your cap.
That's because you looked at the wrong stats.
Yeah, well, it loaded the page incorrectly. And
Okay.
then I was like, and I was looking, I was like, damn, that's crazy. And then I realized, I was like, because we were live, I'm pretty sure. And I was like,
Yeah.
damn, I'm an idiot. I can't even edit this out. Anyway, Jamison, one of at the end of it all, one of the best standstill shooters in the NBA, I think.
Yep.
That's you need to move and make shots. That's why you talked about his progression with Darko early on in the podcast. But that's just like a great skill to shoot like 55% on standstill open threes. He was extremely efficient.
A meaningful rebounder. He is far from the defensive reputation that guys like that have. He busts it on defense. Now, he's not a great defender. He doesn't need to be a great defender. I
Not
think he
small
is.
either.
Yeah, he's a big guy. I think he is close to a real rotation spot on a good team. Unbelievable year for an undrafted guy. I don't see a ceiling beyond what he has right now. Like there's games where he's like, okay, I'm going to put it on the floor this game. And he gets 2 turnovers on his first 2 dribbles. He's like, all right, I'm going to shoot. And then he ends up hitting like 5 for 8 from 3 that game, Like he has his game, and there's parts of the game that aren't available to him. And that's life, and that's fine for what he does, because he is one of the best in the world at what he does. He just needs the defense. He needs to solidify around it. We're talking about building blocks to build out from. He's got the most sound foundation there of anyone.
He's a young professional.
Yeah.
He's not even 24 yet. He handles himself on the court like he's 29, like he's been like a depth shooter forever. And he had no experience in the NBA. He came onto the summer league team. He was strong. He came into training camp. He was strong. He beat guys for a spot. Jared Rhoden had that spot, and Jamison beat him.
The
And
team wanted to give it elsewhere, and he
yes,
took it with his play.
He took it because he was just good. He was just good. He was better at things that he was good at, and he was better at things that he was bad at. And that ultimately was like, this is an NBA player sitting here.
Yep.
I don't know what it looks like on a good team, but he can hang around on teams in the NBA as a player, certainly. And he did that this year with the Raptors. If there's unseen development, I'd be so interested to see where it comes from, what it looks like. Could be cool. Yeah. Hell yeah for Jamison. Garrett Temple, our union leader, my GOAT, the teachers union supporter, Garrett Temple, injured in the last game. Also, give his life to the floor every time he steps on it. Everyone says he's the coolest guy and the nicest man and the best. What's the term? Mentor,
leader.
Everyone loves this guy. around the NBA and within the Raptors locker room. He clearly is not an elite shooter. He's not an elite defender. He's not elite at anything on the floor, but
Doesn't matter.
he goes and he moves through as an NBA veteran of however many years. He moves through actions correctly, professionally, and that can actually elevate for short periods of time. And he cares. And oh man, a good man really is like a good person can help transform things. You
He
lead by
only
example.
he only played when the team was screwing up. It was literally the young guys are playing boneheadedly. We gotta show them what's up. And then a couple games when they were short, and he would always turn it around. They would always start playing more mature, more grown up basketball as soon as he hit the floor. It was really good for him, man. The Raptors had been looking for that locker room vet for a while, and he knocked that out of the park. Just for what his role was in the team, on the franchise, A+ season, home run.
Yeah. I think 4 years at LSU, 15 years in the NBA, nearly 39 years old right away. I don't know if he comes back. I'm
Yeah,
sure the Raptors are probably thinking, Garrett, we'd love to have you back in this capacity. And
yeah,
he's probably saying, I'd love to be back in the capacity where the minimum salary is about certain millions of dollars.
yeah.
Quibble, quibble, quibble. Garrett, cool guy, lovable man. Everyone loves him. All that good stuff. AJ Lawson is perhaps the next guy there.
You know what I
Hey,
really like about him?
he's cool.
Well, yeah, his game doesn't change no matter what. If
Yeah.
he's in the G League, if he's in the NBA, if he's playing next to Rhoden and Shed, if he's playing next to Scottie and Immanuel, he plays the same. And that's not a lot of. As a guy, I came up through the G League. I was there. I watched all these two-way guys. You know
Mm-hmm.
who else was like that? Was Chris Boucher. Very few of the
Those
others.
guys are so cool.
They're amazing. Lorenzo Brown
Incorrigible.
was not like that. And Lorenzo Brown taught me a lot about what would work and what wouldn't in the NBA because I was sure, right? MVP.
Pierre
He
Jackson
wasn't.
averaged 34 points per game and he changed. And
Yeah,
yet AJ Lawson is incorrigible.
that's right. And I love that about him. Good for him.
He's what, 26? He's been
Yeah.
battling the back end of the NBA constantly. I don't know what it looks like next year. He got a guaranteed contract to this year. Basically, it's a training camp deal. If the Raptors are like,
24. He's almost 25.
oh, sorry. Oh, yeah, my bad. He's almost 25. Redacted, retraction. So he's battled through the back end. He is not enough of a shooter for that to be his thing. He's not enough of an athlete for that to be his thing. But on a team like the Raptors that was kind of like going through the doldrums, he is enough of a shooter and an athlete to compel
Yeah.
repeatedly. And he compelled. And you can't close the book on anyone. The work will continue for AJ. He's in his hometown team. Whether this was his last meaningful run or with the Raptors or whether it's a step for something more, what a cool thing for him. And he made the most of it,
And
just
he
like
had
Chris
that
Boucher did in the,
that
the
game
step up.
where Jacoby just hit the game winner, Jamal just missed his a couple nights later. And then the night or maybe two games after that, Lawson couldn't miss. Remember, he
33.
scored like 30. Yeah. You know, it's hard to know if he'll be in the NBA, be with the Raptors. Nothing's guaranteed. I'm happy he had that game for his
I
hometown team.
Yep. I hope that whether like that was I think I have a tweet about that. I was like AJ Lawson has done a tremendous job of building out his highlight package that he can show to everyone forever. And I hope that he signs something very lucrative. And if that
Yeah,
doesn't come, then I hope that he's able to sign piecemeal lucrative things for years and years and years and
yeah,
just set himself
agreed.
up tremendously. Also, just God, those guys when they come up and they sit across from you, the thankfulness and the graciousness just oozes off of those guys. You know what I mean? They battle for 4 years, then they have the big game. It's just they have incredible perspective. Those
Yeah.
guys are always, yeah, appreciate that. Jared Rhoden,
Hmm.
maybe, like possibly an NBA player. He does
Yeah.
things. And he helped the defense in my mind. He did. That was
He,
important.
25. He's a little older. He's been in it as long as Lawson has. I think probably a better defender, probably a better prospect, I think, than Lawson.
He's more sound. Lawson has some pop, but Rhoden is
Lawson
like
has more
less
verve.
mistake. Verve, yeah, yeah. Rhoden is not as mistake prone, I don't think. But I mean, like, I
Yeah,
don't know. He ended up with the splits. He shot 50% from the field. He finished in transition. He finished off cuts. He got a couple like jab, step into the lane finishes. Ultimately, what 32% from three, 33%. Oh, what is he like? Yeah, 32% over his career on how many 3-point attempts? He's 90 attempts. I mean, just
yeah,
there's so
it's
much in
nothing.
the air with these guys.
That's right. It's just when you're that age, 25, 26, and when you're a prospect that no one invested a pick in you, it's tough to make it into the to get a full-time gig in the league without that standout skill, you know?
There's no front office member who sees you on their docket right now.
No one
They
went
they
to
did
bat.
they did yep. Nobody went to bat for you, which is why Jamison is so goddamn impressive. The way he came, really impressive. The way he just
Yeah.
muscled his way through it. Yeah, Jared, we'll see, we'll see. Colin Castleton, Orlando Robinson. I know Orlando isn't going to be here, but he was here for a decent chunk. The
Yeah.
bigs. Colin will have the training camp situation. He'll be back. We'll see about the rest of the. Any thoughts?
They both had a shot at a position of need, you know? Like AJ and Jared had a shot because the Raptors needed bodies, but the 2-3-4 position is set for the Raptors next year. Like
No
they're
shot.
not, no matter how well they play in training camp, without injuries or trade, they're not in the rotation. I think both Colin and Orlando, given certain level of play, could have been in the rotation next year. I don't think either of them hit that level of play.
It's a good point. It's like Jeff Delton actually has found minutes in like elsewhere in the NBA, but when he came along, it was like, we have to give some to Malachi. Fred is going to play
Yeah.
38 minutes per game. Pascal / Scottie lead the offense for the other chunks. Like, who are you stealing from here?
Yeah.
Yeah. Jared is just, yeah, Jared, it's tough to, Jared and AJ don't really have a path there. But if Colin and Orlando had really done the thing, they could have.
And who
Yeah, they
knows?
really.
Maybe they come in. I mean, Orlando's 3-point stroke really came along towards the end there. Defensively, he improved a lot. Um, I don't think that's enough. You know,
Yeah.
just I don't think that's enough. Colin looks a little, I don't think is ready to play center, even backup center on a good team. I had Orlando as having a better season than Colin. I'm
I
glad they'll
think
both have a
Colin
shot.
I think Colin is a better player than Orlando, but I think Orlando played better.
Yeah,
He had
that's
a
yeah,
little bit more run, but I mean, like, yeah, I just God hope the best for both of them.
yeah,
I'll never be mad when players get better. I'll never be mad when players get paid. It's just like
yeah,
that's your dream, that's your job. Have we
and
covered it?
yeah. Um, Chomche.
Chomche Masai called him the gem, the hidden one of the draft class. He said one of the saddest parts of the season was when Chomche tore his MCL. There's a great video essay on Raptors Republic's YouTube page by Cody Wiles about Ulrich Chomche. There is so much for him to improve upon. There's so much that he does on the floor. My hope is that he becomes incorrigible the same way that Raptors bigs of the past have, and finds his way as kind of like this live wire player, and then pads the stuff out because he's still so young. God, he's young.
What was your favorite part of the year? It was a weird year to cover. There were a lot of fun points, but it's hard to cover tanking teams. What did you enjoy?
The start was around the Vince game. Gradey was averaging like 20. We got to celebrate Vince. Vince's moment was one of the coolest things perhaps the coolest thing I've ever seen in sport. The connection to the arena of
Yeah.
people, the like raw. He's always been an emotional guy, but the raw emotion he put on, felt like the screaming, tears bouncing off of his cheeks, flexing. It was like back and forth through crowd, and he in the crowd. Whoa. When I
Yeah.
experienced that in person, it was like, wow. It was truly electric in there, despite no basketball being played. And it was built off the back of what this guy did 20 years ago. That's a special thing. Was a very cool thing. And they played fun basketball early on in the season. They lost everything, but they were in a bunch of things. It was just like,
Yep.
yeah. And also selfishly, as like the guy who is saying, I think Grady's going to be really fun and really great. I mean, he starts off the season gangbusters. I'm like, hell yeah. And then it went sideways. But that was probably the most fun part of the season. That Vince thing was maybe that was the most fun I had at a game. It was truly special. You?
It's a great answer. Yeah, I think I had a lot of fun pieces that I enjoyed writing out of not fun games, because that's something that I enjoy, the writing as more than anything else in what we do. I know
You're
this
such
is
a
sort of an
we
ageist.
all like what we're good at usually.
Thanks. There were moments where, a game would happen that's frustrating. There'd be moments that are frustrating, and I'd be able to turn that into a piece that I'd be really happy with. And emotionally, it would be like you totally vacuum out what was there into this thing. And I'm just like, cool, I did my job well. And I really, really like.
You
Um,
take a bad game the same way that Jakob takes a bounce pass from 16 feet and somehow it's a layup at the end of it. How's that sound?
'Cause that's kinder than I deserve, but there's real potential because we haven't watched basketball that they're supposed to win for a while.
Sucks, dude.
Next year, I'm so excited that they're going to try to win, because that leaves us avenues for, we're going to enjoy ourselves a lot. Fans are going to enjoy themselves a lot. I'm excited. This year in many ways was something the team had to get through. They did well. They, like, far be it just to say they went through the motions. They certainly did not. But the goal of the season was to end it, and they
That's
did. And I'm excited for everyone, for us, for fans, for viewers, for readers. Ticket, just next year's going to be. I'm excited for next year.
the goal of this podcast is to end it as well. Anything you'd
Which,
like to say before we get out of here?
brother, I've been talking for weeks. It feels like I got nothing.
Yeah, me too. Spent. Absolutely. From myself,
Well,
from
hold on.
Lewis.
Don't you need to give a secret word?
Oh, yeah. Tweet at myself or Lewis. What word do you want it to be? You've listened the whole time. What word?
Goldilocks.
Goldie, yeah, tweet Goldilocks at us, and we will follow you back. This is usually the word was swordfish. Goldilocks. We'll follow you back on Twitter, and we've been doing this for years because if you listen to 2 hours and like 18 minutes of a podcast, we so appreciate you. Thank you for tuning in with us. From myself, from Louis Zatzman, the two guys who've just been palling around. Whether you got into this in the morning or at night, have a blessed day and goodbye.